Alright, let's get started. Number 12. The scold's bridle. History has always had a weird problem with people talking too much. But in old Europe, if the person talking too much was a woman, society sometimes decided the best solution was not a conversation. It was iron. The scold's bridle was basically a metal cage locked around a woman's head. It looked like someone tried to invent a helmet, a muzzle, and a nightmare at the same time. Inside the mouth, there could be a sharp metal piece that pressed down on the tongue, making speech painful or impossible. And what crime could get someone punished like this? Being called loud, being called gossipy, being called quarrelsome, which is just an old-fashioned way of saying, this woman has opinions and we are tired of hearing them. The victim could be paraded through town while people mocked her. So the punishment was not just pain, it was public humiliation. The whole point was to turn one person into a warning sign for every other woman watching. Number 11. The shrew's fiddle. This device was a wooden yoke shaped almost like a violin. The victim's neck went through one hole, and their wrists went through two smaller holes in front. Once locked in, their arms were forced up and their head was trapped in place. So now they could not move properly, could not defend themselves, and could not even scratch their own face if a fly landed on it. And then came the parade, because old punishments were obsessed with turning pain into community entertainment. People were marched through town while everyone stared, laughed, shouted, and judged. Again, this punishment was often used against women accused of being too noisy, too argumentative, or too difficult. In some places, extra weight could be added, turning the punishment from humiliating to physically crushing. The logic was simple and awful. Do not just punish the person. Make the whole town watch the person being reduced to a joke. Number 10. Raffinadosis. Raffinadosis was a punishment connected to adultery. If a man was caught in an affair, he could face a punishment so humiliating that even explaining it sounds like history is trying to prank you. The punishment involved shaving or burning hair from private areas with hot ash, then using a large radish in a deeply degrading way. Yes, a radish. A vegetable became part of the criminal justice system. The Romans had a similar humiliating punishment connected to adultery, except some sources say they used a fish instead. The point was not only pain, it was humiliation. Ancient societies cared heavily about honor, shame, household control, and public reputation. So punishments for misconduct were often designed to destroy dignity in front of others. Number 9. The neck violin. The neck violin was a wooden board shaped like a violin. The victim's head was locked through the middle, and the wrists were locked through smaller holes. The result looked silly at first. Then you realize the person could barely move. They could not use their hands. They could not turn properly. They could not protect themselves from people throwing things, insulting them, or laughing at them in the street. And, yes, of course, they were marched through town. There were even versions made for two people, so two victims could be locked together in one device. The neck violin was often used for public disorder, fighting, gossip, or social offenses. It was less about prison and more about embarrassment. Number 8. Pitch capping. During the Irish Rebellion of 1798, pitch capping was used as a torture method by British forces against suspected rebels. It worked like this. The victim's head was shaved. Hot pitch was poured into a cap or container, placed on the scalp, and allowed to harden. Then it was torn off. This was not a normal punishment. This was terror. It was meant to cause pain, fear, and submission. It was designed to send a message to rebels and anyone suspected of helping them. And the worst part is that punishments like this often happened in messy political environments, where suspicion alone could destroy someone's life. Pitch capping is one of those historical punishments that reminds you how ugly power can become during rebellion and war. The public humiliation was part of it, but this was mostly about cruelty. The people using it were not trying to correct behavior, they were trying to break people. Number 7. The breaking wheel. The breaking wheel sounds like something invented by a villain who thought normal execution was too simple. The victim was tied to a large wooden wheel. Then the executioner used a heavy iron bar or club to break their limbs. Afterward, the body could be woven through the spokes of the wheel and raised up in public as a warning. This was punishment as theater. The wheel was not just for killing, it was for displaying power. Executions were often public events. Crowds gathered, food was sold, children watched. People treated death and punishment like a community activity, which is one of those historical facts that makes you appreciate modern boring weekends. The breaking wheel was used in parts of Europe for serious crimes like murder, robbery, and rebellion. It was meant to be slow, terrifying, and unforgettable. Number 6. The Spanish boot. The Spanish boot was designed for one purpose: crushing the leg or foot. That is already bad enough, but some versions made it even worse. One variation involved placing the foot inside a metal boot and heating it over fire. Some accounts describe oil, salt, or other substances being used to make the torture worse. One famous victim was Archbishop Dermot O'Hurley, an Irish Catholic martyr tortured in 1584. His captors wanted names and information. According to accounts, he endured the torture but refused to give them what they wanted. The Spanish boot shows how punishment and interrogation often blended together. The goal was not always a court sentence. Sometimes the goal was to force information, loyalty, confession, or betrayal. It also shows how strange naming can be. Spanish boot sounds like something you might buy from a stylish shoe shop. Then history explains it, and suddenly you never want to hear the word boot again. Number 5. The execution of Balthazar Gerard. Balthazar Gerard assassinated William of Orange in 1584, and his punishment became one of the most extreme executions in European history. Gerard was not simply executed, he was tortured over a long period before death. The authorities wanted his punishment to match the political shock of the assassination. And when rulers were angry in the 16th century, they did not write a strongly worded press release. They invented a punishment that looked like it came from a nightmare committee. Accounts describe flogging, burning, tearing, and other forms of torture spread across days. This is the part of history people sometimes forget. Punishment was not always just about the criminal. It was about the audience. It was about fear. It was about teaching everyone else what power could do. Modern people often ask, why were punishments so extreme? Because rulers wanted terror to do the work of security. Number 4. Hanged, drawn, and quartered. This was one of England's most infamous punishments, usually reserved for treason. And treason was not treated like an ordinary crime. To the medieval and early modern state, treason was an attack on the ruler, the government, and the natural order of society. So the punishment had to be dramatic. The victim was dragged to the place of execution, hanged until near death, then subjected to further mutilation before being beheaded and divided into 4 parts. The remains were displayed in different places as a warning. It was brutal, public, and deeply symbolic. Every stage had a message. The dragging showed disgrace, the hanging showed death, the cutting showed total destruction, the display showed what happens when you challenge the crown, and yes, crowds came to watch, because old public punishment was basically the worst kind of outdoor event. Number 3. Poena Cullae. Ancient Rome had a special punishment for parricide, which means killing a parent or close family member. The punishment was called poena cullae. The condemned person was placed inside a leather sack and thrown into water to drown. Already terrible. But Rome looked at that and said, not symbolic enough. So the sack could also contain animals, including a rooster, a dog, a serpent, and a monkey. Now, whether every version always used all these animals is debated, but the idea became famous because it was so bizarre. The victim was trapped in darkness, surrounded by panicking animals, then thrown into water. This was not random cruelty, it was symbolic cruelty. The Romans saw parricide as a crime against nature itself. Killing a parent was considered so unnatural that the punishment had to feel unnatural too. The animals were probably chosen for symbolic reasons connected to shame, disorder, and impurity. Number 2. The Iron Coffin of Lissa. The Iron Coffin of Lissa is one of those punishments that sounds like it belongs in a horror story. The idea was simple. Put the prisoner inside an iron coffin with a lid that closed very slowly. Not instantly, slowly. Over days, the person would watch the lid move closer and closer. That is what makes it so terrifying. It was not only physical punishment, it was psychological torture. The victim had to wait, watch, and understand exactly what was coming. There is something uniquely cruel about slow fear. A fast punishment shocks the body. A slow punishment traps the mind. This kind of story also shows why some historical punishments became legendary. Whether every detail was recorded perfectly or exaggerated later, the fear behind the idea is easy to understand. Number 1. Scaphism. Scaphism is often described as one of the most horrifying execution methods ever imagined. It is usually associated with ancient Persia, though the main descriptions come from Greek sources, and historians debate how reliable some of those accounts are. But the story is famous for a reason. The condemned person was supposedly trapped between 2 boats or hollowed-out logs, with the head, hands, and feet exposed. They were force-fed milk and honey, and the mixture was smeared on the body. Then they were left exposed near water. The sweetness attracted insects. The trapped body, waste, heat, and exposure created a slow death over days. It is disgusting. It is cruel. It is the kind of punishment that makes you wonder how someone even thought of it. And that is why it is number 1. Because scaphism was not just designed to kill, it was designed to stretch death into a process. The terror was the waiting, the exposure, the helplessness, the insects, the body slowly breaking down, while nature became part of the execution. It sounds so extreme that some historians treat the details carefully. Ancient writers sometimes exaggerated enemy cruelty to make foreign empires look barbaric. But even as a reported punishment, scaphism became one of history's darkest examples of how creative humans can be when they decide mercy is optional. And that is the disturbing truth behind this whole list. A lot of these punishments were not only about justice, they were about control, shame, and warning everyone else. So next time someone says the past was simpler, remember this list. That is all for today. Subscribe to see our future videos.